stop sharing?
Well, I think, yes. Why don't you stop sharing?
I'm having a hard time getting the seeing my cursor. So I don't.
There you go.
Am I stopped now?
Yes, you are. That's perfect. That's
Okay.
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay. I can't see anybody else now.
Oh, you can't?
No, that's okay. I'll get back to you. Don't worry. I just,
All right. Well, we can see, put it on grid view, maybe.
I got us.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. And hopefully you have some really interesting questions for Lorraine. Let's see, Cynthia has a question. Maybe just go ahead and give your question.
Hi, Lorraine. Nice to see you.
Well, thank you.
I always really enjoy your work. My question was really wanting to hear your relationship to making the art and how maybe that has helped you to process and even heal from some of the trauma that you have experienced and talked about today.
Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia. And I love your work too. So it's very mutual. I think the main thing is just kind of not having that stuff all inside, being able to put it out. That's one part of it, just getting it out there, making these pieces. And some of these pieces have had a really intense impact on me as I make them. There was one that when I put it together, I had this, like, my heart started fluttering crazy, and also it's been extremely helpful for me the way the clay has kind of led me in this very gentle way away from the idea that that there was something wrong with me, that all this happened to me, and also the feeling of isolation about it, which also was tremendously helped by going to 12-step programs. But when I started being able to see this in as a political and spiritual larger context, that really helped me a lot. Just not seeing it as this thing that had happened to me because there was something wrong with me and whatever, I saw it, yeah, this is happening to everybody,
Mhm.
this is like all of us, all of us who are oppressed and marginalized, it's just not just me. That was really helpful. I think that that contextualization was really helpful. And also then I could share it with people and hear other people's stories, and that's always helpful too.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I think as somebody who has also experienced childhood trauma, I think a layer for me was that I was conditioned to keep secrets, right? Because these were family members, these were people that I loved. And so, and also just if they weren't wrong out of my love and need for them, then it must have been me. And so I think it can be incredibly cathartic to, to go to therapy and someone else to bear witness, right? And to affirm, yeah, that wasn't you, right? And also to externalize that in a work of art. But I'm struck by so many of your pieces, just the way that some of the pieces really express, I don't even have quite the right words for it. And it's linked to some of the ideas you were talking about, but almost like, there are pieces, like there's one piece where the head is open and it has these, I think, pointing fingers, right? And it struck me as like those inner voices that are arguing, right? That they're inside of this one person and they're almost like judging and arguing and debating all of these things. So it's sort of like, I think that there's an incredible, that you're able to really articulate in clay these very complex aspects of psychological and emotional grappling with trauma, with oppression, with sort of being alive. So yeah, I was just sort of nudging you to, I was just curious about your relationship with the forms that you're creating, right? As a healing process for yourself, and just as, you know, it's almost like I can see the grappling and you're able to really create a visual reference for that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I thank the universe because that's where it all comes from. I sure wouldn't know how to do it. Yeah.
Lorraine, could you talk a little bit about your relationship of being a doctor, a medical doctor, and how that has fed your work or worked with how you had the two? I think it's really wonderful when people have a different career other than just being, going through a whole art track. So they bring the richness of what they also learned about the medical field. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I'm sorry. I just had to laugh because it seems to me that everyone who's trying to live through an art track also has another job. It's this just happened to be my other job. And I think that's a good question. And I have thought about it often. One thing that being a doctor gave me was a real education in anatomy, which is really helpful, especially for three-dimensional work. But I went into medicine really actually because I actually wanted to be a researcher. I really wanted to study what wasn't known and move into the unknown and discover new things. And medicine is not really about that. But I also knew almost as I was studying that the medicine I was being taught was not sufficient. It was interesting, it was complex, it was fascinating, and learning all the things that we learned, it was just really wonderful. But it was clear that there was really no explanation for disease. It just, it either happened or it didn't happen. Maybe there was a germ involved, and then you might have got the germ and the person next to you didn't, or and so I knew that there was more to be known. And I was really interested in, I guess because maybe because I was so skilled in dissociation because of my childhood, I was really interested in mind-body connections. And I studied hypnosis and guided imagery and that kind of stuff after my medicine training, and used that in my practice. But then, when I got into practice and I started seeing people and realizing that, the real problem was much bigger. The real problem was the social issues, and the ideas that we were bombarded with, and all of this horrible fast food, and I would, just and the disconnection between people, between us and the world, and the sense of, especially now, I mean, I kind of feel it as a scent of death in the air from all of the dying species and the dying rivers and the dying ocean. And I think that's what is making the kids so sick, because they really smell stuff. They hear stuff that we can't hear when we're old and feeble, can't see as well as these young people, and they're picking up on stuff. So yeah, there's and of course, as my political understanding grew, and I got to understand about colonialism and capitalism and all of that stuff, that doesn't really have anything to do with being a doctor, but it really clarified for me that medicine is tiny, and illness, and this has been said for millennia, the art is short, life is long. Yeah, so yeah. I mean, in some ways, I had to do something else besides art because art wasn't enough. I mean, medicine
Yes.
wasn't enough. Medicine wasn't enough, so I had to do something bigger, like, and art happened to be the thing it was.
Mhm. Really amazing. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, Lorraine, can you say something about like how did people respond to your early pieces when you were really working out, drama stuff? What kind of interactions?
Oh, a little bit of an echo there.
Wow, that's weird.
People ran out the door, people ran out the house. I was holding open studios in my house. I didn't have a separate studio at that time. And particularly people that I knew through because we were all in, survivor circles, they would come and it would just blow them out of the water. That the other thing about doing that early work was that there's just a tremendous amount of denial that accompanies all of these horrible memories. And there's something you said, Cynthia, that jingled around in my brain and I've lost it. But and so I couldn't deny the reality of the stuff that was appearing out of my hands. I wasn't consciously making any of it, but it was all these little people in all of these states of despair and being torn about. And yeah, that people had very strong reactions to it, except for the people who couldn't get it at all and thought they were little dolls. And you're going to make more of those little dolls? Somebody said to me, no, well, maybe, I hope not,
Sheila had a question. Hi, Sheila from New York.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm not an artist at all. I'm just an old friend of Mary's, and I'm so proud of this weed initiative. And so I joined, and hopefully I'll come to some more of these meetings. Lorraine, I Googled you when I, saw the invite, and I read about you, and I was really fascinated. And I just don't disagree with anything you said. You said it so eloquently. You took it from the personal to the global in just a very succinct form. Like it was just amazing. And I just, like I said, I don't disagree with anything. And I want to say that before I ask you my question, because it might sound like I'm disagreeing with you, but do you envision a body of work that reflects any amount of hope? Or do you already, is there some hope in your work that I'm not seeing?
I'm sorry. I people really are like, oh, don't you have any hope for anything? I feel I have a lot of really weird feelings about hope. Hope on the one hand, people say, well, if you don't have hope, then you won't, continue to try to do stuff. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of hope, but I will continue to try to do stuff. I feel like because we live in this dualistic world, if you start talking about hope, then on the other side, you're talking about disappointment. And so that recognition that I had many years ago led me into a gratitude practice, which is more oriented towards what are the things that make me wake up. And I don't care, maybe there's something that hurts and I'm like, oh, foot, you're there. My goodness. Thank you. So I just, and I've just had that. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's any hope. I think I had more hope before I realized how inevitable extinction is. I had some hope that we might be able to somehow get ourselves out of globalism and capitalism and colonialism and oppression and all that interlocking stuff. I thought maybe we might be able to do that, but I think time is kind of running out on us now. And
yeah. It's
And-
funny you use that word extinction because a couple weeks ago I went to something here in New York at the Japan Society,
Mhm.
and it was a piece of performance art, and it was called Extinction Rituals.
Mhm.
And I didn't really even understand it, but I'm hearing this word extinction that you're using. And that seems to be the theme sort of in the performing arts around here recently. So you're not alone.
No, I know. I read about it a lot, and it is seeming more and more like a likely probability.
Thank you. Eleanor has her hand up.
You have to unmute yourself, Eleanor. We want to hear you.
You're still muted.
Can the moderator unmute her?
Let's see. I can try. I can only ask her.
There
to-
you go. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm on my phone and it's finicky at the Zoom controls. So thank you so much to Weed and for hosting this event. And Lorraine, thank you so much. I saw years ago your show at the Museum of the African Diaspora and got a chance to speak with you a little bit then, and your work, and you made such an impression on me, like just so powerful. And at that time you were still my memory is mostly working in that beautiful black clay
Mhm.
and the very stark white I have been holding intention to reconnect, and so it's like, oh, I want to come to that talk.
Oh, good.
So gosh, thank you for everything you said, and particularly for what you spoke about victims and survivors and coercion and perpetrators, that the perpetrators are the ones that are doing the coercion, right?
Mhm.
Like not necessarily like the instruments of the institutions, but like those, like this is how I took it, kind of the puppet masters of, but that was, yeah, very helpful to me personally. And let's see, let me come with a question. So I'm exploring myself, like what is understanding what it is to like acknowledging the truth, like for myself, I am a victim, I am a survivor of a lot. And so what's the relationship between being like, yeah, that wasn't my fault, that wasn't my responsibility, fill in the blank about the what, and but also like personal accountability, like yes, global extraction and agriculture, but also like I just bought a bottle of water yesterday in a plastic bottle, like that is my personal responsibility. Like I am complicit, in the institutions. And so I'm curious to hear you speak about that, and I'm curious to hear a bit about how you explore that dynamic between sort of victimhood, survivorhood, and responsibility and accountability.
Boy,
That's Dan.
that's a really great question. It's just it all is very tangled. We can't help but be complicit. And just, I'll tell you what my practice is. And, I haven't done plastic bottled water in a long time. I have, if I'm gonna need water, I carry a metal water container, and I refuse water that people offer me in plastic bottles. And I use public transportation, and I haven't eaten meat in a long time. So those are small things, but they make me feel a little less complicit. And sometimes that's the best you can do, you know? I mean, you know, I don't know, I don't buy clothes. I don't, so that's just my practice, and it just helps a little, but it doesn't, it helps clear me so that I can do other things, I guess is more what I could say. We are in this space, in this time, and there's, it's kind of like what the people who want to argue against reparations say, well, I never owned any slaves, so why should blah, 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 blah. And what we have to do is, you and I were not complicit in the violence that was done to us. We can try to not recreate any of that violence on anyone else. We can be as attentive as we can to our behavior and not hurt anybody or hurt anything, or, not step on ants unnecessarily, I mean, sometimes you just have to, but, and, and there are people, I mean, it's good to talk about the institutions and the systems, but we have to remember that the institutions and the systems were created by people, and the bad things that those institutions do are carried out by people. It's not either or. And if we can avoid being part of that system of carrying out bad things, that's good. There was something else that you said that I wanted to address. Everything just slides right through my brain these days. Is that everything that you were asking about? A number of different things, and I know I didn't quite touch them all.
Well, I'm interested in how, just to perhaps hear more about how you are exploring that relationship about responsibility. And I mean, I saw at the end in the coffins that the title of that piece, like, is this what you want? And one of the pieces had that, one of the coffins had a plastic bottle in it. And I saw that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe in telling on myself, so that's, but so I see that piece, but just to hear a bit more about how you're engaging with that dance about responsibility, like personal responsibility, and also being like, yeah, I didn't choose this. This isn't my, you're making what I hear is you're making as many right choices as you can.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I guess what I'm a little concerned about is what it feels like, the sense of responsibility about present time complicity in perpetration is, and I may not be right about this, I may be missing this, but it feels to me a little bit like that it's a little mixed together with a question of complicity with the stuff that was done to us in the past. We didn't create that, but somehow maybe we had some complicity in it. Like, we didn't create bottled water, but when we drink from it, we are complicit in some way, which, I mean, it's trivial. It's okay. It's nobody's going to beat you up for drinking bottled water. I'm not going to beat you up for drinking bottled water. So I'll tell you the thing that I feel the most complicit in is when I fire my kiln. When I fire this work, I use a lot of electricity. And where I try and live my life in a way that minimizes my use of utilities of that sort, I try and do the things that you do to try and minimize your electric bill, and, and don't use too much water. And I've saved a bunch of atmospheric water, river water, but I do feel guilt. And it's kind of interesting. I went to see this exhibit by this Kenyan artist named Wengechi Mutu. And she does work in what she calls clay and pulp and glue, which is basically some combination, it sounds like, of not clay, but dirt, oil, some combination of paper mache on one hand and paper glue on the paper paper clay mache, because it's glue and dirt and paper. And she doesn't have to fire it. And I'm like, I want to figure out how she does that so I can stop firing stuff too, because this electricity is not going to be here forever, you know? So yeah, when I can figure that out, I'll feel really much better about myself.
Lorraine, Cynthia had her hand up again. Did you want to say anything else, Cynthia?
Sure. I was just wanting to chime in on a couple of things. I mean, I think going back to the question about hope, I think for me, something that I was thinking about was the concept of wabi sabi. That, you know, it comes from a Japanese aesthetics in ceramics, often used where there's no attempt to sort of hide what is broken, but it becomes a distinguishing feature and a prized element of the artwork. So I think that, you know, I do find your work actually very hopeful because you're able to express that brokenness, and yet you are whole and you are incredibly articulate. And so, like, I think for those of us who have survived and are still here and present and experiencing moments of joy, and even if we're still continuing to grapple with our brokenness, that is a hopeful thing in and of itself. So that's something I wanted to add. And I think it ties into what I was also thinking with the last bit of discussion around where grappling with our complicity. You know, I think stopping intergenerational trauma is a heroic feat in and of itself right there. And I just think that we meet ourselves and each other and the earth where we can and strive to do better in the ways that we're able. That's sort of my approach. And I think I see that in your work, Lorraine, and in your practice and in your conversation. And I think we should be careful about making the perfect the enemy of the good, right? We do what we can. We're gentle with ourselves and with each other. And, you know, I think that, and I don't mean to minimize in any way the crisis, especially that we face in the climate. I do believe that the earth is going to be okay. I think what will be extinct will be human beings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ultimately.
Oh, the earth has done this many times. She knows what to do. And she's going to get rid of us, and then she's going to make something even more beautiful in the next 2 or 3 million years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was it. Thank you for
All right.
the mic, the talking stick or whatever.
Right.
So, okay, I think we're ready to wrap up. And I see Andre had her hand up just for a really quick one. Or who, Susan or Andre?
Yeah, let's have everybody have their question. Go ahead.
Yeah, do your question. Susan?
Lorraine, I have to thank you for giving this talk. You are so articulate, and your work it's more than gorgeous, because it really comes in from a deep place and goes into a deep place. So that, you know, I don't have an adjective for it other than I'm very touched by it. But I was going to totally jump on another wagon here and actually ask something about your materials and your art process. And when you just brought in that thing about, you know, paper clay, I just thought in the back of my mind, I just bet she's not going to like that at all, because I don't, you know, I unfortunately missed the first couple of minutes of your talking, and I don't know how you came to clay, but I wonder if it's like, how much of your work do you have an idea when you start, but you don't end up with that idea? Or how much of your work when you start on it, you know, we all talk about, you know, denial and, you know, memory loss and things that still harm us, you know, burying them very deep. some of those things come forward in your process? Like how important is the material and the process to your work? Because as someone who worked with clay for 18 years and gave it up to work with, broken things, which is another thing. But I know that there is something about working with clay when I was in it that was very hard to let go of because of that hidden part of the process. I don't know if I just messed up my question, but I'm asking about your process and your material and what how important that is to you for what you end up at the end as a sculpture.
I'm not totally sure I understand your question, but I've really only ever worked with clay. I've played around a little bit with paper mache, but not much, because clay's so heavy. And I usually start out with some vague idea, some general image. And as I work it, it becomes clearer to me. It tells me what it wants. It's very clear about what it wants to have happen with its hair. It tells me its name at some point. Yeah, I don't know if I can say more than that.
No, you've already answered a large part of what I was asking.
Yeah.
That the clay itself speaks to you while you're working with it, and that it has to affect like what the outcome is, and what you bring to it. So yes, thank you very much.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I guess in closing, I'll read what Sherry just wrote. Thank you, Lorraine. What inspiring thinking and making you have been dedicating your practice to. I only hope that your voice and support reaches young people who are struggling with abuse. Merci. So that is what I think of as your educational component of your work, is that this speaks to a lot of people grappling with this issue, and hopefully a hopeful or a way of finding some kind of clarity so they can move forward. Sherry, did you want to say anything else?
Just a great big thank you to Weed and to everybody who's been here, Lorraine, and asked such good questions. Made me really go away thinking it's gonna be some night.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all, and have a wonderful evening, and thank you, Lorraine.
I have a question I'd like to ask Lorraine.
Yeah, we could keep going. I don't mind.
Right.
Andre had her hand up too, but
Okay, so if anybody needs to go, then go ahead, and we'll keep going for a little bit.
Oh, thank you for acknowledging it, Lorraine. First, I have known and admired your work terribly, and I identify with it in so many ways, from the abuse to the play. And I just want to offer another perspective. I'm 87, and it's been my personal experience that at the bottom of trauma, when we have reached the really bottom of horrors in our lives and the trauma, I think that underneath all of that is an innate desire to heal and to get better. And that gives me hope that that we do have the power, the intelligence, and the spirit to survive. And that's my modus operandi, to keep going, to keep making art, and to keep having hope. And I know that everything looks dire, and God knows I study the environment and teach about it, and know that it has been on a terrible trajectory. Nevertheless, I do believe in our innate desire to heal and to get better. I just want to put that perspective out there.
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Lorraine, I have a question, and I'm not I have no idea where it's going, but I am wondering, clay comes from the natural world, and I am wondering what role nature has played in your healing or is playing in your continued healing, or just curious.
You mean aside from the artwork, just how nature's been terrific. Nature knocks me out. Yeah. And especially in the early days when I was starting to get all this stuff, I would go up to the hills there, Redwood, and just walk around. And yeah, that was really very healing for me to just be able to be outside. And even well, anyways, that's been really good. And I have a garden, a yard, and I work on that a lot. And that really helps, just talking to the plants and admonishing the gophers, and that it's been wonderful. I love being outside. I love being with the plants and stuff. And I don't have it's hard for me to get to it's harder to get to the parks and stuff now. But I would like to do that more, and I'm studying that. But in the meantime, I have my yard.
Mhm. Mhm. So do you feel like you bring nature into your artwork in many ways?
Yeah, in some ways, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of an odd question. I mean, the clay is natural. The clay is just river, mud.
Mhm.
In the extinction installation, there's a lot of natural pieces. There's bones, there's lichen, there's
Mhm.
pigs, there's rose thorns, there's all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, but in terms of, now I have to think about this.
Mm.
I'm not sure I can answer that question.
I'm not sure why I asked it.
I'm not sure what bringing nature into the process would look like,
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have a piece that has like leaves for hands and a nest with an egg in it, so yeah, there's some nature
Grace,
pieces.
thank you for coming. Therese has to go as well.
Okay, thank you. Bye. Thank you very much.
I have to chime in. I'm sorry. I just can't help myself.
First on in, girl.
It's the art historian in me. I teach art history and on a global level from prehistory to contemporary art. But one of my favorite things that I've ever heard about people who work in clay, work in ceramics, came from the artist Aaron Toole, who runs the kiln at UC Berkeley, where I studied ceramics. And he said to make something in clay is to enter something into the archaeological record.
To make something out of clay is to enter it into the archaeological record.
Right? Right?
That's cool.
I mean, we learn about ancient civilizations by looking at the shards and bits and pieces of clay to
Mhm.
understand social stratification, to understand how they engaged with and observed nature, about creativity. So I think there is something profoundly linked to artistic expression and human history. And yeah, so people have been firing clay before they knew how to harness and commodify electricity.
Yeah.
And so keep on keeping on. And, in 35,000 years, people will dig up your pieces and in the archaeological record and say, wow, what insights they had to the human condition.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to say, as I think more and more about extinction, and I imagine all of these buildings falling to ruin, and what's going to happen to the stuff that I'm making, I mean, the things I write are going to disintegrate, but the clay stuff will still be around. I don't have any anticipation that there's going to be human beings around in 3,500 years, because I don't think we're going to last, the rest of this century. But there might be aliens from another planet that come like they do in Star Trek to examine this planet, you know, tens of thousands of years from now. And they may look at that.
Stephanie, did you have a question?
Stephanie, hi.
Hi, Lorraine.
Hi.
Okay, so this always, I always feel like art is subjective.
Mhm.
So, you know, and how people see art. So this, my answer here is completely subjective. So an answer, so my thoughts on if you include nature into your sculpture pieces, and I'm like, yeah, because, okay, this is the way I see it. It's like art imitates life. Your pieces like speak on life so much, you know, like they tune in to the human experience. And so and we, let's see, how do I put it? Like what our connection, we're like everything's connected. So like, so our experience is our relationship to, I don't know, I'm like, maybe my thoughts are a little ahead of me or whatever. Like, but I don't know, you see what I'm saying? Like, we're connected to nature, and everything by our connection, like whatever our experience is, we project that onto nature, and nature projects its experience onto us. And so, I mean, however, you know, of course we have to break it down, and, you know, for each piece, and like see, you know, go back, you know, to how it came to be, how that piece came to be from your hands to, you know, to what we see from your thoughts, to what we see from your experiences. I don't know, you know, so there's the connection there. It's hard to explain, but it's like, I'm like, my answer to it is like, how I see it is like, yeah, your pieces are connected to nature. Like I, you know, it's just a matter of, I mean, people say that I look, I like overanalyze everything, but like, yeah, I see it. I see the nature in your pieces.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for the effort. Thank you.
I don't know. Do you see where I'm coming from though?
It is. Yeah, right. Thank you. Susan. Susan,
Okay,
you're
I
with
just, yeah, I just been like rubbing. That I'm going to mess up this quote completely by a wonderful writer, Susan, who lives in Berkeley. If anyone remembers her last name, but I use it in a lot of my work, and it's like, and the quote is, "We are nature, seeing nature, and being nature, and speaking nature." So you
Yeah.
just are nature. We're all part of it, part and parcel.
Yeah, I know that's one of those things that I feel about the way that we're separated. Like we're here and nature's over there. And, you know, do we bring these things together? You know, it's like you say, we are nature.
It's already together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like city people always say, oh, I'm going
Yeah.
out to nature.
Thank you again.
I was like, yeah, I go out to nature. You know?
Well,
Go
thank
out
you
yourself.
again.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess we'll close the recording, and
One more thing about
really grateful. Beg your
about
pardon?
can I just say one more thing? Because I this was something that struck me when Cynthia was talking in the very beginning, and it hit my head and then bounced off. about secrets, because my experience made me an exquisite secret keeper. And one of the most important things that's been happening to me in the process of this development of this art, which I never expected to happen in my life, is that gradually I'm having to reveal more and more and more secrets.
Yep.
And I keep waiting for the horrible thing that they told me would happen if I told the truth and told the secrets. And it hasn't happened yet. And
It's killing to tell secrets.
just, it's terrifying, you know?
They
So-
lied to you.
They were good at it.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's all. And just for me to use the word torture in the early part of this presentation is like one of those little baby steps that I've been taking as I go along, you know. I've only started being able to use that word in the last maybe year or so. And I rarely,
That's right.
I mean, there's still more worse words to come, but I haven't said them yet.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you. Let's just stop the recording anyway.